Son of a... What's up, Cerebral Football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. Oh, boy. By now, you've heard the news. It ain't breaking news any longer. It broke sometime last night. CJ Gardner-Johnson signs a 1-year, $6.5 million guaranteed with the chance of earning up to $8 million with the Detroit Lions. I think a lot of people look at that contract and go, it feels like if the Philadelphia Eagles really wanted to match that deal, they could have. And I think that's what sucks, man, is that like CJ Gardner-Johnson, I do feel like was a young, ascending player. It's a guy that I've heard a lot of wild reports out there about his play. And I get that he's a hybrid safety type. And it's really difficult to determine the market. And Howie Roseman does not miss on these markets very often. Like Howie understands the markets. He knows it's one of his best attributes, understanding the market out there and being able to basically inform players and their agents. Like, I'm telling you with 100% accuracy, this is your market. It sucks, man, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I did not like CJ Gardner-Johnson as a player. I know that people point out that he was 47th in terms of the grading, and that even the 1 year that Jalen Mills was here in Philadelphia, he graded higher. But I don't think that's a very accurate telling of the story. The bottom line is this was a young man that was moving from nickel out to safety. And yeah, I mean, he struggled early on in the season with his run fits. You could take a look at something like his 41 out of 52, 78.8% completion rate and say that, you know, when he wasn't picking off the football, he was being taken advantage of. I want to point out a couple things, though, because I do think that these things are such half-truths. The half-truth of this is that 78.8% ranked 21st overall in the league in terms of the highest. He was barely just outside the top 20 highest completion rates. But stick with me. You tell me if these names aren't good safeties. And if maybe this statistic it's a little difficult. It's a little difficult to judge it. Who finished in the top 20 in terms of giving up completion rates? Jeremy Chin did. Budda Baker did. Jimmy Ward did. Javon Holland did. Justin Simmons did. Harrison Smith did. I take any one of those safeties, guys. I don't know about you. They're all pretty good players. All those dudes I just listed are really good football players. I'm going to say that when you're judging safety play, and especially completion percentage, unless you really, really have intimate knowledge of the coverage and what is the assignment of the player, boy, that's hard to grade. That is a hard one to grade, I'm going to be honest with you. So, to me, I thought that what you could say is he struggled early in the season making the transition, and then all of a sudden you saw that when he went out of the lineup and was injured, our secondary was not the same without him. Now, you can argue that, yes, Steve, there was a lot of compounding interest here because, you know, you got Avonte went down, and then you had CJ Gardner-Johnson go down. And, you know, there was a lot of moving pieces that the Eagles had to make for in the secondary. It wasn't just one guy. I hear you. But it's still, I mean, we saw the difference, man. And during the second half of the season, I thought CJ Gardner-Johnson played pretty dang well, if I'm going to be honest. Now, what I will say is CJ Gardner-Johnson, once these players leave, you know, it is what it is, man. I'm an Eagles fan. I wish the guy the best. I really wish he would have ended up with the Philadelphia Eagles, but it is what it is. I mean, it is what it is, and we got to turn the page, man, and that's what we're doing right now at the second half of this video. Let's turn the page, and let's talk about a potential addition to the Philadelphia Eagles who's hit the free agency market. I'm going to say this young man's name again because this is definitely a person that I would prioritize, which is Nasir Adderly, formerly of the Los Angeles Chargers, a Philadelphia native, and what up, University of Delaware Blue Hens? Yeah, that's right. What's up, Newcastle County? What's up, Newark? Hey, can you believe they gave one of us Newcastle County kids, you know, someone from Collins Park, an audience on YouTube? They made a mistake. Nasir Adderly is one of these guys that, you know, when you look at it, it's hard to judge him because I can tell you can look at explosive traits. So you can look at things like your 10-yard split. You can look at things like your broad jump. You can look at things like your vertical. And you can say, okay, like this is where he stacks in terms of like the athletic traits, in terms of explosion. But when you're looking at nickel cornerbacks and you're looking at safeties in particular, linebackers as well, you really need to know the lateral movement drills. You need to know how they scored in the lateral movement drills. And even more than that, I mean, I thought you heard a couple of really good points by former NFL players who have talked about the scouting combine. And even they have highlighted that it's more than just the numbers. Sometimes it's about the eye test of how many steps they're taking in these drills. You know, you heard Jason Kelsey go into a really great explanation of that about Are you taking 6 steps? Are you taking 7 steps? Are you taking 5 steps? Like, there are some things that kind of indicate how well a guy's doing that's just beyond the time in itself. So with that said, when you look at Nasir Adderly, it's kind of tough because he had a left hamstring pull during his pro day at UD, and because of that left hamstring pull, he didn't do any of the lateral movement drills, and he didn't run a second 40 time. But I can give you the explosive traits, guys. You know that's what I'm about here. I'm going to give you what I can give you in terms of the measurables. All right, to begin with, he's 6 foot, 206 pounds, 31-inch arm reach, and a 73.875 wingspan. All right, I'll give you my take on a few things here, but let me go and I'll circle back here. He had a 4.62 40. I don't care about full 40s, guys. I don't think they're as useful as people think. What I do care about is your splits. A 1.6, 1.10 split, very typical of a safety, if I'm going to be honest. It's about the number you expect to see from a safety. A 2.7, 1.20 split. That number, Nasir Adderly, I think, is a better athlete than he showed there on that 20 split. If I'm going to be real, his film seems better to me. A 2.71 it's not like ridiculously low for a safety, but I would have thought Nasir Adderly was a better runner than that, because that 2.71 20 split, that would lead you to believe like, oh man, we need to see this guy against tight ends and some slot receivers and see if he can stay in phase down the field. That's what that 20 split number would make me a little concerned about. He had a 38-inch vertical and 129-inch broad jump. So if you see the 1.6, 1.10 split, the 30-inch vertical with the 129-inch broad jump, that would tell you he's somewhat of an explosive athlete. Like, there are explosive traits there to say, oh, this dude's an explosive athlete. With that said, I will tell you a 73.875-inch wingspan with a 2.71 20 split would make me go back to the film to see how this guy is playing against tight ends in particular or big, tall slot receivers, because that is, that's not the biggest wingspan if I'm going to be real. The arm reach isn't the issue. He's got 31-inch arms. That's pretty good actually for an inside player, whether you're playing over the top as a safety or inside as a nickel. With that said, I went back and I took a look at his grading. I wanted to see the last 3 years, 2020, 2021, and 2022. I don't really care about grading, but it's a good feel to see if there's progression in terms of the experts, so-called experts, guys. This stuff is very subjective when it comes to grading. But I'll break it down by numbers that are actual measurables in a second, too. In 2020, he was the 91st graded safety with 42.5. In 2021, he was the 49th graded safety, 62.9. And then last season, he was the 41st graded safety, 68.2. Okay, starting point. Oh, wow, this guy looks like he could be a starter in the league. So he's progressing. He's got a positive trend going on here year over year. And that's what I'm going to look for in a young corner that'll only be like 26 by season's completion. So that's to me, that's what you're looking for, is you want to see that type of productivity, that type of progression from the player. Now, his very first, that 2020 marker, the very first year I gave you here, he was 14 of 18, 77.8%, 3 forced incompletions, 17% forced incompletion rate. That's really high, guys. 3 pass breakups and an interception. Even though he's only got 73.875-inch wingspan, he's 2.71 20-yard split, somehow he's getting in there and being disruptive. I mean, the underlying numbers tell you he's being disruptive, even going all the way back to when he was a really, really badly graded safety. 2021, where he's more of the moderate in the middle graded safety. 23 of 34, which is a 67.6% completion rate against you. Like I said, guys, completion percentages, a little iffy when you're talking about safeties. 6 forced incompletions, which ranked 11th overall in the league in 2021. An 18% forced incompletion rate. 18%, guys, is really, really freaking good. And he had 4 pass breakups. I look at this, guys, and I'm like, okay, like, this dude is disruptive around the ball. I will say that some of the underlying numbers when it comes to interceptions, like, he hasn't necessarily secured the football, but he's disruptive around the football. And then last year, 41st graded guy, he was 13 of 20, so 13 completions against 20 attempts. 65%, so you can see 77.8, 67.6, 65%. It keeps coming down, and his grades keep getting better and better and better. 3 forced incompletions, 15% forced incompletion rate. You can see he's 15% or higher in each of the last 3 seasons, which is, like I said, guys, this is a really good marker, to be honest. 2 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. Nasir Adderly, to me, is one of these guys that is probably under the radar. I think for Philly guys, because the young man is from Philadelphia, we probably know him better than the rest of the league does, outside of the AFC West, who clearly knows who Nasir Adderly is. He's in a really, really, really good secondary that's out there in LA. There's some components to that secondary that is ridiculously good, both in the safety room to the outside corners. They do have talent there. I still think they're missing a player opposite of Asante Samuel Jr., if I'm being honest, but that secondary is still pretty good if we're going to be real. With that said, Philly native, played at the University of Delaware. He's young. He's been getting better every season. This is the type of guy when, you miss securing a dude like CJ Gardner-Johnson. For me personally, this is a way that you can kind of capitalize on this. We're going into the second week now of free agency. This young man is still available. We know the market seems to be about 6.5 to about 8 million for most of these safeties. It's a matter how the front office feels about a guy like Nasir Adderly. And there's a lot of these dudes. This is not the only player we're going to cover, guys. I'm going to keep going over all these dudes. I'm going to give you all the connections to the guys that have connections back to Philadelphia, whether they played for us, whether they're some familiarity with our coaching staff, whether they are from Philadelphia. There are some dudes out there with connections, guys, to be real. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention. Leave your comments down below. You guys, if you know me for a while, you know I'm a pretty big Nasir Adderly fan. This is a guy that I said last year, like, man, I don't know if he was on the open trade market. I talked about it. He had 1 year left. If he was on the open trade market, I probably would have tried to make a play for him. But I guess he wasn't, or Howie just didn't like the value that came back to him in terms of the trade market. Hard to say, guys. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention, guys, and I'll see y'all on the next video.